Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, glad to have you here. Oh look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee?
I don't drink coffee.
You sure? It's cultist coffee.
What makes it cultist coffee?
I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it.
Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning grind. Welcome to the office. I hope that you are having a good day. I am still not getting everything done. I am trying to get done, but I do have important things going on this afternoon regarding new projects. So I'm hoping to have more things to announce very soon. So I hope that you guys are likewise being at least as productive as you possibly can. Good morning, James and Zero the Blade. We've got Lynn here and PH. Welcome. Oh, by the way, Brianna said that she did want to try to redo her, or not redo, but reschedule her conversation about good and evil and the Satanic Temple, and our discussion about good and evil in the context of our theories on corruption and all of that for tomorrow. So tomorrow then, after the Levi emergency situation last Tuesday, so table talk tomorrow. I need to go ahead and make up the thumbnail for that because people will probably be interested in that. We'll be talking with Brianna. So there we go. Sable Phoenix is here. I command you with my mental fish powers. Classic. Well, thank you, Steel Mongoose. Sometimes I don't feel like it, but I was actually trying to go through a bunch of the projects that I have on deck that have not ever gotten all the way pushed across the finish line, and trying to make a whole list of them and exactly what needs to be done in order to actually push them across the finish line, and which projects that still need to be done, which projects can just be dropped. Vision, good morning, Vision. James says, I'm excited for that conversation. Hopefully she isn't pushing herself and has had enough time to grieve. Well, I asked her on Saturday what she wanted to do when she said to contact her yesterday on Sunday. So I did. So I think that she's probably fine now, or as fine as you can be, I suppose. So she checked in yesterday on that. So we will see. Let's see. Is there anything else going on in the Geekverse at the moment? Also, I feel like this has all of a sudden become a you hit feast or famine, like I said, with either of these interviews. So it seems like having one of them a week has been generally the way we've been going. So we got Brianna tomorrow. Yep. And I got to talk with Brianna tomorrow as well. I've got I need to schedule a meeting with Cameron too. But anyway, so I don't think there's anything else going on right now. All right, let's bring up this GURPS space. I was thinking about this yesterday. Probably, I think we don't really need to do another day on this, but I do want to look at what their advanced world building is, because I think this has been a great book for some things, but on the other hand, I don't think it has been the most practical book that we have looked at. The mass combat system, it was a great GURPS book, because we were all excited about it. And I said, this book has generated some fantastic conversations because of its analysis of different kinds of sci-fi, different categorizing different types of ability to travel between the stars, really explaining why this is difficult anyway, and why you get into science fiction when you're talking about being able to travel between stars and all of that. So all of that's been very good. And it seemed, but I don't know that what we've been looking at with the world creation, and once we got into, because we went through basic world creation, which is all the physical components of the world, which is about to be the social parameters here, that I was as excited about this as I was about, say, mass combat. Mass combat, when we were looking at that, we're like, oh, wow, I got to integrate this into a game. I can completely see how this style of gameplay could be integrated into a game. This one's more difficult. This one is definitely a GM's book. And as I've said quite a bit, that I want, so many of the GURPS books are basically designed for the game master. The Starships book itself, we might look at tomorrow if we wrap this up today. The Starships book is definitely for both players and game masters, because players would want to design their own ships, often anyway. This is the game master side of things. The most interesting part of this book to me so far has been trying to figure out how large your map should be for some kind of campaign, depending on how many different inhabitable planets or how many different alien species, intelligent alien species you want to have around, based on some parameters about how frequent that is in the universe, what size your map should be, which, and then computing what the density of those different star systems should be, which will tell you basically how far apart, generally speaking, your planets are. Some of the areas might be more dense or less dense, but generally speaking, how dense the situation, how dense your campaign environment is. It's not campaign world, it's campaign section of the galaxy. And then computing, well, how long will it actually take to get from planet to planet? And then talk about, well, how kind of warp drive, or faster than light drive in general would you need? That part I really liked, because that part is something about maintaining consistency in either a role-playing game or in the context of a sci-fi series. If you don't want your travel, which we've used the term here before, if you don't want your travel to be moving at the speed of plot, then having some type of, having at least some part of, not the solar system, but some chunk of the galaxy or whatever it is that you're working with, or it could be a whole galaxy, but kind of nailed down so you've got some type of understanding and can have some consistency between how long it takes to get to places, and then come up with some type of science fiction approach to what it takes to travel that distance in some amount of time that you want your players to be able to get, or your main characters to be able to get from planet to planet. I liked that part. The world design stuff I found less useful because Lynn has been talking about just putting together a spreadsheet that will generate a lot of this probably just fine. Because I just can't see rolling for it. The most of the time, or going into this level of going into this level of detail, what I actually was thinking that a lot of this would actually be for, when we're talking about breathability and the density of the planet and its gravity and all of that, seems like things that you would add in later as far as details. If somebody is scanning, like for instance, it seems like most of the planets that you're going to come up to are probably, if you're on a certain style of gaming, deliberately designed for some type of some type of impact on the story, whether that's an RPG story and you're telling it with players, or whether it's a story that you're actually writing out. The planets are there because they have some type of feature that's going to help you tell a story. I suppose classic examples are things like Hoth. Okay, it's an ice world, so all right, ice world, they're on the ice world, or they're on the desert world, or they're on Dagobah, the swamp world. Or in Star Trek, we talked about Star Trek, the original series. We're on this planet because this planet is going to generate some type of problem specifically, like maybe it's one of these faux utopia worlds that's going to have some type of lesson, or, present some kind of problem for our heroes. That kind of information is just there because of the plot. But I was thinking, if you're on board the starship and you're trying to design some kind of graphic, if it's like a TV show or a movie, and you're trying to generate some type of graphic where somebody's scanning the planet, and you want to have information about the planet pop up, and you want it to be plausible, then having this kind of structure to put some type of plausible statistics behind that world that might be on screen for a few minutes or a few seconds, really just a couple of seconds or something like that. So if somebody's freeze framing and looking at, okay, what's the information here? Like that's world building to me, and the verisimilitude of the world. To me, that's when I would use it. But I don't know what you guys are thinking. James says, I agree. This has been great. PH says, yesterday I saw a video from the dungeon coach about an adversity system. I think it might give some insights on what to do with the corruption system. Oh, let's remember the breathe and sip. Let's do that right now. All right, before we get into this. All right, so everybody got your favorite beverage? Let's breathe. 2 deep breaths, complete exhales, and then sip. There we go. Lynn says, in the end, I view GURPS Space as a great place to look for ideas, but it's not a book I look at for actual rules on most topics. To me, like it's another game master book, and that's why I wish that GURPS was more open. Because who needs this book? Well, who needs this book? For the most part, it seems, is a game master trying to do, world in the broad sense, world design, and really wants to be able to or is willing to take the time to sit down and basically prepare another book for somebody to play out of. So GURPS has several different levels. So, use the basic set to create some type of structure for a game, and then, pulling out what's not useful, highlighting what is useful, using the, to create, like they did with Dungeon Fantasy. And if you're going to do sci-fi, well, here's the sci-fi handbook for you. Build from that. This is still in the basic world creation. So I'm going to try to go a bit faster here, because there is also aliens. So we'll just see. So, but settlement type, it talks about colonies, outposts, uninhabited worlds. Technology level, of course, GURPS is big on technology level. Every world has an associated tech level The tech level of the world does not normally indicate that only goods of the tech level are available there. In a universe where most worlds have access to off-planet commerce, citizens will often be able to buy goods at other tech levels. And that's a whole world, but we've talked about how you can get more complicated than that because different regions of a planet may have different tech levels. We got a way to randomly generate a tech level. I said, even if you're going to crash land on a planet, the character's going to crash land on a planet. Well, what's the best way to come up with where they crash land? Well, think of what's the most exciting kind of thing that they could be crash landing on, or to generate it randomly, which may not give you a really interesting place for your game time. Steele says, I think I've only played GURPS once, but I own several books just for their value as source books. I mean, a lot of people do that. Population of a world, carrying capacity. What are they saying that depends on? The carrying capacity of the world, this is the maximum population the world can support in a reasonable comfort for long periods of time. A world's population can exceed the carrying capacity, but only at the cost of widespread poverty and risk of a disastrous dieback. Finally, the tech level of the settlement controls the density of the population can be supported. So tech level controls density. If a world has a habitability of 3 or less and a tech level of 7 or less, then the carrying capacity for the world is automatically 0. Such a case should not occur under the rules in Step 9. Otherwise, refer to the following tables. To get the base carrying capacity for the world, select its tech level. Multiply this value by the appropriate modifier from the affinity multipliers table. So here's our base carrying capacity per tech level. And then multiply this value by the appropriate multiplier from the affinity multipliers table right here. Finally, any world type other than asteroid belt, multiply the result by the square of the world's diameter. If the world is an asteroid belt type, multiply by 50. For an entire asteroid belt, an asteroid belt offers material broken up into many small chunks, providing a lot of potential living surface. Oh, so not just one asteroid. I thought, okay, so for one asteroid, but you're talking about people living on an entire asteroid belt, so you have a lot of surface area. Homeworld populations versus colony populations, outpost populations. Society type. Let's see what it says about altering the colony population table. Output. And I say here's outpost. Wait, what is the colony population table? Colony population table. The colony population table makes several assumptions about the normal growth of colony worlds. Each of these assumptions can be changed to fit the following needs of the setting. A stable colony must have at least 10,000 inhabitants. This fixes the lowest possible entry on the table. The current table assumes that an average die roll of 10 combined with a medium affinity score and no time since foundation modifier will match the minimum population. When rewriting this table, the GM may wish to make sure a similar result occurs. Otherwise, some new colonies will have a very high populations, and other very old colonies will have a minimum population. A colony world's population will start to grow at a rate of about 2.3% per year, averaged over its entire history. This assumption fixes the ratio between adjacent entries on the table and the +1 die roll modifier for each decade since the colony's foundation. If populations grow faster, increase the ratio between the entries or apply the +1 modifier more often than every 10 years. If colony populations grow more slowly, decrease the ratio between the entries or apply the +1 modifier less often. Each point of the affinity score will, on average, double a colony world's population. Generating society types. We see tables like this a lot, like even in like the Dungeons and Dragons world builder guides and things like that. What type of government or society is there? Good morning, Andrew. Hello, TS Frontman. Good morning, Stray. Lynn says, I think that's a good take on it. GURPS space doesn't have a lot of utility for anybody who isn't doing world building directly. PH says, me and my group always treated GURPS as a modular system. When we play it, it flies. Well, it can. And I think that's, or it cannot, or it can be very detailed. But I think that's what some people don't get about GURPS. And if GURPS did have a robust, if you had all of the GURPS core books that Steve Jackson was putting out, and then you had this vast like array outside of it, beyond those books, that's the secondary level that used all those books to create a whole bunch of different worlds and books. I think it could be very popular, much more popular than it is today. Control rating. We talked about control rating when we were doing our domain design. Base income per capita table. See, this is again one of those things. I don't know how often this is actually going to come up. Estimating trade volume. Oh, now this could be interesting. Gravity trade model. I remember using gravity models when we were talking about human geography in graduate school. The best known model for estimating the flow of trade between 2 points is the gravity trade model, so called because of the fundamental equation describing trade flows resembling Newton's equation for the force of gravity between two masses. In order to estimate the trade volume between two specific worlds, the GM will need to determine two parameters which should be consistent throughout his setting. The simplest formula for estimating trade volume is T equals K times V1 times V2 divided by D. Here, T is the trade volume between the two worlds in trillions of dollars. K is the constant in which the GM must decide, times V1 and V2 are the economic volumes of the two worlds in trillions of dollars, and D is the distance between the two worlds in any convenient units, usually parsecs. The gravity trade model can yield some very odd results when used on certain pairs of worlds. If one world's economic volume is much higher than the others, the estimated trade volume between them can be many times the size of the smaller world's economy. At the GM's option, a low population world may carry on all of its direct trade with its nearest high population world. The trade volume of the link should be no higher than the small world's economic volume. The value of the constant K is very dependent upon the setting. The GM should determine it early in his setting design process if at least he intends to work out trade routes or otherwise estimate the amount of interstellar traffic. The best way to determine K is through trial and error until the GM is happy with the results as applied to the most important worlds of his setting. The value of K will also have an effect on what kind of trade is likely to occur. For instance, the GM may assume that two worlds with high population and high tech level located close to each other in space will have a trade volume between 5 and 10% of each world's economic volume. If K is set to a high enough point to permit the levels of trade, interstellar commerce may involve ordinary manufactured goods or even certain raw materials. Passenger service between worlds will also be fairly common as well. A smaller value for K will give rise to smaller trade volumes, suggesting a setting where interstellar trade is more difficult or less important. In such settings, trade will tend to be dominated by high-value, low-volume goods, such as luxury items and precision machinery. Even information may become a worthwhile trade good, especially if there's no equivalent of faster-than-light radio. Another factor that affects trade volumes is the presence of political borders. Worlds that are members of different spacefaring civilizations are likely to trade less than those who share the same culture and government. The GM should decide how much to reduce the trade volume between two worlds that are not part of the same society. A reasonable reduction would be to divide the trade volume by 3. If trade will be important to the campaign, compute the trade world between the volume between the target worlds and as many of the neighbors as convenient. Determining trade routes, estimating space traffic. Lynn says, you just have to pick and choose what you want to use it. I never feel obligated to use the official rules. Spaceports, installations. Here is advanced world building. It seems incredible that what we went through was the basic world building. So what in the world could be in the advanced world building? Oh, the rest of this world building system picks up where chapter 4 left off. At this point, the GM may have worlds placed on the campaign map ready for adventure. He may now wish to generate the rest of any star system containing a world, including other worlds that may exist orbiting the same star. Or he may simply wish to generate a whole star system from scratch to see what worlds appear at random. In either case, the following steps will help the GM create a single complete solar system. This portion of the world building sequence uses more mathematical computation and more detail will be generated. Oh, okay. Okay. So we're basically continuing steps here in advanced world building. I thought we were going to go back to the beginning, and that's where I thought we were going. Like, now in the basic world building chapter, we were using some basic assumptions for generating a planetary density and mass, planetary density, mass, and gravity. If you really want to get into it, here's the advanced way that we can calculate the gravitational pull of the planet. I thought that's where we were going. Okay, we're not. Advanced world building, we are continuing with additional steps. Step number 15 for stars, for starting with different numbers of stars. GURPS is designed to be a bunch of modules that you plug into your rule set as needed, right? That's what I've always understood it's supposed to be. Yes, it has layered different levels of your particular level of complexity that you want. And then also, like when we were looking at GURPS action, for instance, like the basic bad, the basic abstract difficulty. That's what it was. Systems like that come into different secondary books to plug in as you like. Stellar classification. Stars fall into a very few well-defined groups according to their physical properties. Astronomers classify stars using their spectral class, essentially a way to sort stars by color and size. The first component of the spectral class is the star's spectral type or color, denoted by a single letter. The most important spectral types are O, B, A, F, G, K, and M, remembered by astronomers using the jingle, "Oh, be a fine girl, kiss me." The sequence of spectral stars also defines the relative surface temperature and luminosity of stars. O and B are hot and bright, while K and M are cool and dim. Okay. One set of stars doesn't fall into this classification scheme, the white dwarf stars. Star masses. This step determines the mass of each star in the system. Stellar mass. Primary star mass, companion stars. If there are any companion stars in the target system, each must have a mass equal to or lower than the primary star. To generate each companion star's mass at random, roll 1d minus 1. If the result is 0, then the companion star has almost exactly the same mass as the primary. Its mass may be given by the same entry in the stellar mass table. If the result is 1 or greater, then roll that many d6s and count down as many entries in the dice as the dice indicate from the primary star's entry on the table. If the bottom of the table is reached, then stop. No star may have a mass lower than about 1.08 solar masses. Star system age. This step determines the age of the star system. If all the stars in the system and their planets, if any, will normally be the same age, as measured from the moment their primary star ignited nuclear fusion in its core. Stellar age table. Stellar characteristics. Stellar evolution table. Is that changing type of stars? I guess so. Main sequence stars. Giant stars, subgiant stars, determining star radius. For every luminosity class except D, which is white dwarfs, a star's radius is exactly determined by its effective temperature and its luminosity. Use the following formula here. Companion star orbits. Locating orbital zones is step 20. This step prepares, like, who has actually been through this for more than one planet? Like, more than one system. Nobody can use it all, and it's all not necessarily compatible. Well, in a certain way, because it's all compatible because it's based off all the same, GURPS mechanics. But if you're simplifying, you wouldn't use both simplified and complex rules for something at the same time anyway. And multiple magic systems and things like that. Orbital zones, placing first planets, arrangement of gas giants, place planetary orbits, filling remaining orbits of planets, placing moons, moon size classes, generating the details. At this point, every orbit around each star in the target system has been filled with some object or has been specifically designated as empty. Terrestrial worlds and major moons are in place, and the first portion of each one's world type is known. In this step, the rest of the world's type for each terrestrial planet and major moon will be designed. Atmosphere, climate, hydrographic, world sizes. So I'm sure we're dealing with how massive the different stars are in different particular orbital bands. Planetary orbital eccentricity. Satellite orbital radiuses. Before the orbital period of a satellite can be computed, the radius of its orbit around a planet must be determined. This radius determines the satellite's origins and planet type. Tidal braking. A planet orbiting its primary star will not experience that star's gravity uniformly. The star will exert more gravitational force on the near side of the planet than on the far side. Since a planet is not a perfectly rigid body, it will respond by deforming slightly, forming a pair of tidal bulges pointing toward and away from the star. However, if the planet rotates with respect to its primary star, the starward bulge will be offset slightly from a line pointing directly toward it. The star's gravity tends to pull on this bulge, exerting torque on the planet's body and slowing its rotation. This tidal braking also works when a planet has a major moon. The moon's gravity creates tidal bulges and slows the planet's rotation by pulling back on the nearest bulge. Likewise, the planet exerts tidal forces on its moons, slowing their own rotation. As a result, most major moons are tide-locked to their planets. They rotate exactly once per orbital period, so they will always present the same face to the planet. Some planets orbiting close to their primary stars are tide-locked to the star, causing them to have a day face in a permanent light and a night face in permanent darkness. To estimate the level of tidal force being exerted on a planet by each of its moons, use the following formula. Rotational period, local calendar, axial tilt. Geologic activity on the planet. The generation of stars and star systems is really, really tedious to do with dice. Perfectly doable, but takes forever. Yeah, it needs to be automated. The spreadsheet, Python program or something like that. Oh yeah, spreadsheet up here. I pulled the data from Lang's astrophysical data, stars and planets, made a table and added a randomizer to generate individual stars. That's the way I think you'd have to do. If I were designing, if for some reason I were designing an entire campaign setting that needed this, and for some reason I wanted to have all of this for the planet, doing it that way, it would have to do this. Yeah, Steel Mongoose says really interesting information, but I don't see it being all that relevant in game. I don't either. Let's society type economics. Here we go. Basic in the solar system. As an example of star system design, here is a summary of the major objects in our own star system as they are described by the world building rules in this book. Special cases, tide-locked worlds, massive stars, red dwarf stars, brown dwarf stars, rogue worlds, terraformed worlds, other objects, asteroids, megastructures. So here we got things like Dyson spheres, or a little bit of information on it. So here is, okay, alien life and alien minds. Let's see what it's talking about with aliens. Alien life in the campaign. People, monsters, things, beasts, life. Clashing definitions. I remember defining life when I was in, we had talked about that as an undergrad. Defining life has been a troublesome part of the search for living things beyond Earth. Some scientists take a narrow definition. Life must be based on DNA in a water matrix, using proteins and getting enough from energy from photosynthesis or breakdown of organic molecules. Earth life, in other words. This may sound restrictive, but it has advantages. We know a lot about Earth life, and we can design experiments to detect it, even across interstellar distances. When you're building a multi-dollar space probe, that's an important consideration. Other scientists, especially those who have studied extremophile organisms on Earth, are willing to allow for some weirdness in alien life. They postulate life that gets its energy from sulfur or iron compounds, like some bacteria found in ocean volcanic vents, but they still assume the organism will be based on DNA and liquid water. Researchers fond of wild speculation have adopted much looser standards. They postulate that life in any system can locally increase the level of organization. They postulate that life is any system that can locally increase the level of organization, or that life is any system capable of undergoing evolution. These definitions allow for just about any kind of life, including plenty from types nobody has imagined yet. For the purpose of this book, we're going to split the difference. We're defining life broadly, including anything from energy-based organisms living in interstellar nebulae to nearly human creatures on nearly Earth-like planets. But we're also assuming that Earth-like life is the most common form, or at least the type most characters are going to spend their time interacting with. Alternate DNA. The DNA and RNA molecules used by Earth life aren't the only ones possible. Scientists have discovered several nucleotide molecules, the building blocks of DNA helix, that don't occur naturally, but which can plug right into DNA and function just fine. So even life very similar to Earth life based on DNA might use a different alphabet at the molecular level. Extending that metaphor, it's also possible to use the same nucleotides, but encode proteins using entirely different sequences, the same letters, but different languages. Okay. Stuff about DNA. Other chemistries, like the silicon-based life forms in Star Trek, right? Hydrogen is the most abundant element, and gas planets like Jupiter are essentially big balls of hydrogen. And hydrogen-based life is possible. If hydrogen-based life is possible, the universe holds a lot of potential places for it to arise. In extremely dense hydrogen, near the core of a gas giant, for instance, crystals of hydrogen could store genetic information in a lattice structure. Ammonia chemistry. Ammonia could replace water as a medium for life. Ammonia has a narrower liquid temperature range than water, so it would require a planet with a very stable climate between 108 degrees Fahrenheit, that's negative 78 degrees C, and negative 27 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 33 C. Hydrocarbon life, silicon and silicone. Lynn says, in my experience, most of it isn't relevant unless you have specifically built an adventure around the precise physical nature of a planet or system. On hot planets, silicon-based life becomes a possibility. Silicon is chemically similar to carbon, though it has no gaseous form. Several large silicon objects on Earth are known as rocks, but interesting chemistries become possible when silicon atoms alternate with oxygen to form silicate chains. Sulfur-based life? Hey, somebody was talking about, do we talk about aliens and acid? We had to. Of course we did. Sulfur-based life probably should take the increased life support disadvantage among oxygen breathers to reflect the difficulty of handling large amounts of sulfuric acid or molten sulfur. Alien creation. Okay, let's talk Alien Creation 1. Let's see about Alien Creation 1 then. Throughout this chapter, there are boxes detailing how to create alien life in GURPS terms. Okay, that's probably going to be some of the most fun stuff for us here. They are setups the user can either make decisions based on the game setting or the needs of the campaign, or roll randomly. This system can be used to generate non-sentient creatures. Can also be used to. So chemical basis. Select the alien's biochemistry based on the climate of its homeworld, or roll randomly on 3D. GM should feel free to disallow certain types of life or adjust the possibilities to suit a given game universe. So that's what we're talking about. Hydrogen-based life, ammonia-based life, hydrocarbon, water-based life, chlorine-based life, silicon sulfate acid life, silicon liquid sulfur life, silicon liquid rock life, plasma life, or exotica, such as nebula-dwelling life, machine life, or magnetic life. Non-chemical life includes plasma life, magnetic life. Let's see what it says about artificial life. Yeah, the Horta. That's what it is. Yes, the Horta. I was trying to think of the name of it, but yes, the silicon life, where that they patch it up with like brick and mortar or something like that at the end. The Horta. That's exactly what it was called. Sable Phoenix says, thing about other chemistries is that they wouldn't occur on anything remotely Earth-like. A silicon-based life form would have to operate in an environment that would melt rock, like the Horta. Lynn says, as a biochemist and microbiologist, I consider carbon-based life broadly similar to ours biochemically to be the most likely, and most exotic biochemistries to be possible under the right conditions. I'm certainly not afraid to throw silicon-based life forms into my games. I forget, we talked about silicon-based life, I remember, in some class I took in college as well. Maybe it was because the silicon, I'm a doctor, I remember that, yes, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. I remember, why were we talking about silicon? I guess just because of how common it is. That, hey, here's something else common in the universe. Could life be made out of this? What is magnetic life? On a neutron star, matter is incredibly compressed, by the gravity of the intense magnetic fields. Atoms take on new shapes, their electron orbitals squeezed into rod shapes by magnetic field lines. In those conditions, normal chemical laws break down, and it becomes possible for chains of single atoms to behave like DNA. The intense magnetic fields are also provide an energy source, leading to the possibility of an entire ecosystem. Life made of degenerate matter like this would be extremely difficult or different from Earth life. It would be much smaller. A creature containing many atoms, as many as atoms as a human, would be compressed down to microscopic size. The smaller size and tremendous supply of energy allows a much faster pace. The physicist Robert Forward wrote a fascinating novel, Dragon's Egg, about life on a neutron star. In the course of the story, a civilization arises on the star, develops science and technology, and finally goes exploring the stars, all during the course of a few days, while bemused human scientists look on. Huh. That's interesting. Magnetic-based life on a neutron star would be certain to have enhanced time sense and several levels of altered time rate. They would also require 4 levels of increased life support to duplicate neutron star conditions. I have never heard of that before. Artificial life, an extremely plausible kind of non-biological life, is machine life. Creatures are close to being able to build machines capable of creating copies of themselves, and some scientists have proposed launching self-replicating space probes toward other stars. I want to see if we can build a von Neumann-like probe when we're looking at GURPS spaceships. Each probe would turn would in turn create copies of itself and send them further out into space. In time, the whole galaxy would be infested with probes, all for the cost of a single launch. Others have proposed similar technologies to create asteroid mining robots or terraform other planets. Author Fred Saberhagen imagined berserkers, self-replicating robot spaceships dedicated to annihilating all life they encounter. Machine life need not have any physical existence at all. They could be entire civilizations of artificial intelligence organisms living entirely within the memory of complex data nets. Such virtual life could be descended from organic life if it becomes possible to upload any organic intelligence into data form. Ecologies and niches. Environment types, alien environments. Step 2 of alien creation, habitat. First decide where in space the organism lives. So we've already come up with their chemistry. Space-dwelling life requires no planet. Planet-bound life comes in 2 types, those native to gas giant atmospheres and those living on more or less terrestrial planets. Since we're assuming the GM has already created the home planet of the aliens, these details should be obvious. For terrestrial planet life, determine if it lives primarily on land or in water. Decide on a roll of 1D. If it's 1 to 3, it's land dwelling. 4 to 6, it's water dwelling. See, but yeah, especially with all of this rolling, you could come up with something that's completely useless for your game. I mean, you could roll it up and then see how it comes in, and then try to come up with some way to get it into play. Oh, V'ger. Yeah. Sable Phoenix says the Horta would have frozen to death if it was inhabiting the same atmosphere as the Enterprise's crew. The real problem with silicon is that the outer p orbitals are too large and it can't easily form complex structures because of steric hindrance. Carbon is small and more agile. Sable Phoenix says, by contrast, an ammonia-based life form would be practically cryogenic. Lynn says, if you play with the pressure, you can get ammonia to stay liquid at high temperatures, but the pressure has to get really high. Sable Phoenix says, but unlike carbon, most other possibilities don't have many possible attachment points to their orbitals. Like Lynn says, so the molecules they can form are either less complex or less numerous. I remember that being talked about specifically, too. You get less complex. I think I remember that. Less complex molecules trying to do silicon-based life. Thank you for the Discord server. Thank you, Stray. Please do come. I've been forgetting to say that in the morning, at the mornings when we start. Please do come by and check out the Discord server. So here's rolling for habitat. Trophic level and strategy. Now determine or decide how the organism gets its energy. There are 2 tables, one for a random animal in the environment and the other for potentially intelligent life. Note that deep ocean vent autotrophs cannot be photosynthetic. Some beings may use 2 methods. Autotrophs and decomposers. Filter feeding, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, trappers, pouncers, chasers. Alien anatomy. All right, let's see about alien anatomy, which is probably going to be more important in the game than their particular chemistry. Okay, walking is an option. Although many science fiction writers have assumed that animals on high-gravity worlds would need extra legs to hold up their weight, it's noteworthy that some large dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex managed to carry many tons of weight on 2 legs. A creature's walking speed depends on the length of its legs and the local gravity. Specifically, speed is proportional to the square root of leg length times gravity. This means that one can generally run faster in high gravity because the higher gravity makes you take faster steps. Well, that's interesting. A creature's walking speed depends on the length of its legs and the local gravity. I can't imagine, though, computing that leg length. Okay, hold on. Let me check out my alien leg length statistics. so that I can come up with an appropriate speed for it. This means that one can generally run faster in high gravity because high gravity makes you take faster steps. To convert this to GURPS terms, move for aliens equals 5 times the square root of L times G, where L is the alien's height or length divided by the human height of 6 feet, and G is the local gravity in G's. So for a creature with a gravity of 0.5 G standing 10 feet tall, basic move should be about 4.5 yards per round, rounded down to 4. The same creature on a planet with 1.2 G would have a basic move of 7. This is only a guideline for creatures that evolved in a particular gravity. Visiting a high G world doesn't automatically make one move faster. Note that really big animals like elephants and the larger dinosaurs never move faster than a walk or trot because too much stress on their bones. That doesn't matter because they can walk pretty fast anyway because of their long legs. Creatures optimized for running can add enhanced move ground advantage. Many creatures have specialized feet with horns or blunt claws for traction or protection against wear. Others get by with just tough soles. On present-day Earth, hooves are found among herbivores, but this is purely a historical accident. Alien worlds might well have hooved meat eaters. Lynn says, yeah, silicon is almost there, but not quite. An interesting possibility is a hybrid boron-nitrogen biochemistry that can do many of the same things as carbon. I think that's why we were talking about that, having that conversation in that college course I remember about silicon, because it's almost there, like you're saying. James says, fascinating conversation today. Lynn says the consequence of this is that animals evolved in high gravity should have faster reflexes because they have to. Sable Phoenix says boron is so rare, though, comparatively speaking. Yeah, that's a real problem with that scheme. Not enough boron in the universe to give it a try. Would be very difficult to just get enough of it in one concentration to make borons that would support human life. This book has sparked a bunch of conversations about how difficult all of this is. First of all, like even going through the rocket math and the space math, all the space math around trying to get to other stars. But like, why is that hard? Generating, this book does at least explain that to you. Oh, we should just like go really fast. Well, okay, here's all the things that actually make that difficult and why that's not actually something that's practical across the world. But then also, okay, well, how much life is out there and what would life look like? Well, all of this tends to make the universe kind of, or at least our galaxy, a kind of more boring place than we would like it to be. You can't get there anyway, and it might be boring once you get out there anyway. And we're not hearing anybody. I guess that's why we need some science fiction in order to potentially have some more fun with our universe than actual science allows, or appears to anyway. Slithering and sliding, climbing, digging. In any environment with sand, snow, or loose dirt, digging provides a way to get at prey hiding underground, or to lurk and hiding and attack things on the surface. It's also a good way to hide and provides insulation against dangerous temperatures in the desert or winter. Magma-dwelling silicates creatures might dig or swim in liquid rock. Because diggers have to move through a dense medium, size becomes a problem. On Earth, nothing larger than an aardvark lives underground full time. Most digging animals, digging claws would be a 1-point perk, equivalent to having a built-in shovel. When tackling harder materials, they simply attack it, breaching the material by doing damage. Diggers use the standard digging rules based on their basic lift. Space opera aliens that can move through the ground as easily as a fish through water can take the tunneling advantage. Burrowing creatures are likely to have poor vision and smell, but they can have extremely good hearing and a sensitive touch advantage. Vibration sense is also very useful. Swimming, flying, immobile creatures. Space travel. Space-dwelling creatures must be able to move around. The obvious method is some type of rocket propulsion, but that brings up the problem of fuel. Unless space life has a very reliable source of new reaction mass, rockets are too costly. Solar sailing is more likely, as space life is likely to be larger in any case and could use itself as a solar sail to change orbit. Plasma-based life could spin a plasma sail or use magnetic fields to catch the solar wind. Game masters who have super science reactionless drives or psionic powers may wish to give space life one of those methods of moving about. Most space dwellers get flight with the Newtonian space flight limitation, though super science beings may be able to have space flight alone. Size and the square cube law. Let's take a look at that. Len says, I'm a scientist, so the math doesn't bother me, but having trouble seeing how much of this is going to work for people who aren't could be very off-putting. Sable Phoenix says, I forget, did GURPS Space talk about electromagnetic solar sails, or am I just cross-pollinating it in my head with atomic rockets? I think it did. I think we talked about that as a variation of solar sails, I think. Science fiction helps us dream, and dreaming helps us problem solve, and problem solving helps us create function. Science fiction is important to human development towards space travel. Science fiction got me interested in actual science for sure. I forget which direction it went for me, but it was probably that for me as well. I wanted to work for NASA for a long, long time. Oh, the sandworms in Dune allowed use ultrasound to fluidize the sand. Otherwise, there's nothing ways that it's going to swim through the sand. Yeah, or what's that? What was that movie where they had those things underneath the desert? It had Kevin Bacon in it. For some reason, that one got watched a lot at my house. But how do those things actually move around in the underground? So it's very important. A very important rule in biology governing animal size is the square cube law. It's a simple consequence of geometry. If you increase something in one dimension, it increases in all dimensions unless you change the shape. Mass is a function of volume, which increases as the cube of the organism's linear size. Since the strength of bones and muscles, or their alien equivalents, depend on cross-sectional area, these elements increase as the square of the size. Consequently, doubling a creature's height means its muscular and structural strength increases by a factor of 4, 2 squared. So far, so good. But its mass increases by a factor of 8, 2 cubed. So it's proportionally only half as strong. This is why ants can heft leaves many times their size, but humans have to strain to lift objects even half their weight. In GURPS terms, this is why a creature's basic lift is based on the square of strength, which in turn scales with length. So, to say that again, the strength of bones and muscles increase as with the square of size. Consequently, doubling a creature's height means its muscular and structural strength increases by a factor of 4, 2 squared. So far, so good, but its mass increases by a factor of 8, 2 cubed. So proportionally, it's only half as strong. That's why ants move around with leaves, but humans have to strain to lift objects even half their weight. The square cube law has other interesting effects. Warm-blooded creatures must cool themselves to regulate temperature, cooling across the body surface. As a creature gets bigger, the ratio of heat-generating mass to cooling surface goes up. This often requires big organisms to develop radiators like an elephant's ears. On the other hand, it means that big warm-blooded creatures can easily survive in cold climates as long as there's enough food. Whales swim comfortably in the Arctic waters where an unprotected human would die in minutes of hypothermia. Large warm-blooded creatures also don't have to eat as much as small ones in proportion to their size. Birds and small mammals eat more than their own body weight each day, whereas whales consume only a few % of their mass. See, to me, the square cube law is can be an important one depending on what type of level of realism you're going for. Right? And this explains like how do you get giant spiders or why don't we have giant spiders and all of that. So Alien Creation 3, this tells us to deal with primary locomotion, secondary locomotion, aliens on wheels. One method missing from the list of locomotion method is the wheel. This may seem strange because wheels and rollers are a major element of human technology. Why aren't they found in nature? There are two main reasons. First, any type of axle or roller is hard to connect to the rest of the organism since it's turning. Possibly a species might evolve non-living wheels made out of some substance like a shell, turned by muscles within the creature. Other creatures could roll into a ball or wheel shape and roll downhill for fast getaways. Second, environment suitable for, is that like a roly-poly? Although I think they kind of turtle up in order to, or roll up in order to protect themselves, but maybe they roll around. Second, environment suitable for wheels aren't all that common. On Earth, there are few places with large extents of smooth, hard, level ground, and most of those are the work of humans for the convenience of their machines. Other worlds might have some environment that's good for driving where a wheeled species might evolve. Wheeled organisms get the no legs, wheeled disadvantage worth negative 20 points. Tremors, that was it. Tremors. Oh, great movie? It's been so long. Lynn says sandworms are something I'm willing to hand wave just because they're so cool. Graboids? Was that from Tremors? Lynn says the square cube law is a good basic constraint. There's a lot of subtler stuff, but I can't see folding it into any reasonable game rules. Yeah, but just if you're, but is a good basic, somewhat easy way to just calculate that and see if you're in the area of plausibility with creatures. Gravity and buoyancy. Symmetry. Alien Creation 4 talks about size, category, size, and mass. Once the basic size, so we've got basic size category. Determine the general size category using the following table. Small, up to 12 inches, human scale, 18 inches to 3 yards, and 5 or more is large, 5 to 30 yards. Once the basic size category is determined, roll below to get the actual size. For a given size, weight can be anywhere from half to twice the listed value based on build. For silicon-based life, double the weight for given size. For magnetic life, determine size and mass normally, then divide size, but not mass, by 1,000. For hydrogen or plasma-based, divide mass, but not size, by 10. For space-dwelling, divide by 5. For a more precise determination of weight, or for huge organisms, because why wouldn't we want more precision here? Divide height in yards by 2, cube the result, and multiply by 2,000 to get the weight in pounds. 200 to get the weight in pounds. Note that weight is in a standard 1G environment. Divide by local gravity to determine weight in the creature's native habitat. Gravity effects. Modify for gravity. Multiply the size by the modifier on the following table based on local gravity. This applies to all land-dwelling life, amphibians or winged flyers, but not aquatic creatures or buoyant flyers. Once a final size is figured, recalibrate weight based on final size. Then multiply that weight by local gravity to get the creature's weight in its native environment. But strength varies depending on a body's plan and musculature, but rough guidelines follow the square cube law. Strength equals 2 times the cube root of mass in pounds. So we also have tight math in GURPS. We talk about tight math in Pathfinder when we're talking about planning out encounters and things like this. But one thing behind it, when they did GURPS 4th edition, I mean, the only thing that allows them to do things like this is that when they did 4th edition, which GURPS 4th edition has been out for a long time, and there probably might not ever be a 5th edition. But one of the things they did put some pretty tight math into GURPS 4th edition about what exactly all of the stats mean so that you can do this kind of stuff in GURPS. So a rough guideline based on the square cubed law says that strength is equal to 2 times the cube root of mass in pounds. This uses the cube root of mass in a way to get the common length factor that doesn't depend on body plan. Since in GURPS, a character's basic lift is proportional to the square of strength, it all works out. So if you are trying to do something like this, GURPS does have the backing in math to do it. I thought I remembered graboids are the worms and tremors. I just like about any movie with Kevin Bacon in it. Us Bacons got to support each other. His father actually did a ton for Philadelphia, the area where I live, and we're originally from. Oh, interesting. PH says it's not known how much octopus can grow. They can eat a large portion of their body weight in a day and grow accordingly. Octopi are fascinating. Yes. Anon says late, but did they cover oxygen content in the atmosphere when it comes to size? Maybe. We've been kind of going a bit fast through the second part of this. That seems like something that it should have, but I'm not sure if we saw it. Because like I said, we're going through it a little bit fast. Metamorphosis, multiple bodies. Hang on, I need to close this door over here. Okay. Alien creation 4, determining symmetry, number of limbs, tails, skeletons, manipulators, skin, hide, and other alternatives. Something tells me that they didn't go through all of this every time they needed a new alien in Star Trek. Metabolism. Temperature regulation. So alien creation 6 is skin, breathing, temperature, growth, reproduction, sex and genetics. Okay, lifespan. How long a creature lives seems to depend chiefly on size and metabolic rate. Among Earth mammals, most species wind up having about 1 billion heartbeats over the course of a life. But a mouse's heart beats at 500 times per minute goes through them in 3 years, while an elephant's heart pumping slowly at about 30 beats per minute can go on for 60 or 70 years. Metabolic rate appears to be roughly proportional to linear size, though the animal's specific build and lifestyle can cause quite a bit of variation. The big joker in the lifespan deck is humanity. For our size, we live considerably longer than we should. A human-sized organism should typically last about 30 years, but humans routinely last 2 or 3 times that long. It's obvious that our bodies aren't really up for the job either. Humans start losing their adult teeth by age 30. And without modern dentistry, one could expect to be toothless by 50. Our joints start to wear out around the same time. Plausibly, most creatures less than 3 yards in length should have short lifespan 1, half normal human lifespan. Those smaller than about 1.5 yards should have short lifespan 2, less than 20 inches to get short lifespan 3, and then less than 1 foot get short lifespan 4. Moreover, only really huge organisms, dinosaur-sized beasts 20 feet or more in length, should be able to have extended lifespan advantage. Of course, as humans themselves demonstrate, intelligence or other technology can provide free levels of longevity. Shift any tool-using intelligent species up 1 increment, so those with short lifespan 1 or 2 go to 1. Those with short lifespan 1 get normal lives. An intelligent-sized or elephant-sized organism would get extended lifespan 1. Metabolic rate also depends on the rate of chemical reactions. Cold environmental organisms, ammonia and hydrogen-based life, should probably be 1 or 2 increments more long-lived than their size would suggest, since they would generally live more slowly. Hot environmental organisms might be similarly short-lived. For silicon-based life, move everything down by 1 increment, and for really fast things like magnetic-based neutron star inhabitants, give them short lifespan to balance their altered time rate advantage. R strategy and K strategy creatures. R strategists take the opposite approach. They have large litters and put in minimal investment into raising the young. Sometimes I think about the rabbits in Rabivania being R strategists. And what happens when you give an R strategist weapons and armor? Stray says there's a lot here. I think it's a bit too much for my tables and myself. Star Trek aliens are covered in latex, not skin. Lynn says parrots. Oh yeah, parrots also fall way off the normal lifespan curve. Interesting. Yeah, you got to put your parrot in your will, right? Sexes, gestation, special gestation, strategy, senses, vision, communication, special abilities. Other special abilities are impossible to predict. Why did woodpeckers become specialized to bore holes in trees? Why did electric eels evolve into living capacitors? On alien worlds, things can get even more bizarre, but the basic laws of nature still apply. What's plausible? The most plausible special abilities for aliens are those that we know are possible because they already exist. Anything used by an existing or extinct Earth species are perfectly defensible. Many special abilities based on Earth life are already described above, but there are more possibilities. Without turning this chapter into a biology encyclopedia, we don't want to get into that, of course, here. There are some abilities to consider. Afflictions in the form of chemical defenses are fairly common. Some are ranged sprays like a skunk's musk or a bombardier beetle's superheated chemical spray. Range tends to be fairly short for spray attacks. Hibernation in unpleasant conditions is another common ability. While shape-shifting in the comic book sense is not really possible, see below, there are creatures that undergo either seasonal or part mutations. Snowshoe rabbits switch between white and brown spotted pelt depending on the season, while many invertebrates completely remodel their bodies as they go through different life stages. These are all simply zero-point features since they happen either once or according to a predictable schedule. On Earth, there are many invisible creatures, undersea organisms whose bodies are exactly as transparent as the water around them. They take advantage of a specific environment and have adapted to those conditions. It requires a medium about as optically dense as one's body tissues. This would be modeled as invisibility to sight only with several limitations. Only in water, a slight chance of being seen. It also works best with small humans, no more than human-sized in scale. Well, what's possible? Projectile weapons, as opposed to sprays, don't show up on Earth, but they aren't completely impossible. Medieval folklore and American frontier legends both describe spiny animals capable of throwing their quills. On alien world, a species might combine quills with a chemical organ like the bombardier beetle to produce an actual dart gun. Creatures might have multiple launchers, but each would be single shot, taking days or weeks to regrow a new dart. Some kind of blowgun arrangement that could use pebbles or seeds as projectiles might be possible, but would require a reliable source of ammunition and something to shoot at. Breath weapons like those of fantasy dragons are also within the realm of possibility, but unlikely. A creature could generate a burning spray, but the energy represented by a large burst of flame is tremendous. The creature either needs an external source of fuel or a very long recharge time between shots. Poison gas is also unlikely because of the difficulty in generating a large volume of gas. Anon says some parrots can live a century or more. Meanwhile, octopi rarely live longer than 3. Blob monster abilities like elastic skin, stretching, or morph would suffer from severe limitations. For Earth animals to change their form generally requires substantial amounts of time. Even small insects undergoing metamorphosis take several days. Among larger creatures, shape changes in pregnancy take months. Anyone designing an alien shape changer should make the process as slow as possible. This only applies to evolved natural species. An artificial organism or machine life might be able to do real-time rearrangement of body parts under conscious control. An exception might exist if the body is usually a swarm of independent creatures. Having an extra head is not unknown on Earth, usually the result of a birth defect that conjoins twins. It could be an inherited trait. If the heads share a single mind or don't contain the brain, as with Larry Niven's puppeteers, then this is simply a matter of better arc of vision and an extra mouth. If they do have separate or redundant brains, then use the GURPS advantage as described. Racial memory is possible, especially for creatures that rely on a great deal upon instinct. The memories could be passed only from parent to child, so that a given individual would only have his parents' memories, but those memories could include the parental memories of his parents and so on. This is especially likely for creatures that reproduce by budding. Alternatively, the species might be able to write memories into the genetic code, giving access to ancestors thousands of generations and back. What's impossible? Overtly paranormal abilities are impossible under the laws of nature as we understand them. That being said, GMs are free to allow some of them as the result of super science unknown to Earth. Duplication violates the laws of the conservation of matter. Creatures that reproduce by fission, creating two identical smaller copies with shared memories, aren't using duplication because it's rare, permanent, and there are no further connection between the two offspring. Mental influence abilities like mind control, mind probe, mind reading, or mind link are super science, unless the species has a form of radio communication, and all members of the species can use that channel. Mind control by physical or chemical means is definitely possible. That's what I was just thinking about, like the worms that control the snail's mind or something like that. But that's a physical or chemical means. But mind probe, mind reading, mind link, super science. Parasenses like clairsentience, penetrating vision, or precognition in the same situation are in the same situation as teleportation. If a creature could use them, they would confer a tremendous advantage and would quickly become widespread. Note that precognition opens the whole Pandora's box of time paradoxes. Size-changing abilities like growth or shrinking are pretty much impossible. They violate the laws of conservation of matter, and creatures getting huge or tiny without changing mass run into severe mechanical constraints. How do tiny muscles lift normal-sized bodies? Best to leave those for four-color comic book reality. Telekinesis, temperature control, DR, force field, and other energetic abilities are another super science-only set. They violate more laws of nature than we can conveniently list. Teleportation fits into the realm of super science. If it exists, it can be described in a logical, consistent manner, but current science says it can't happen. This applies to the advantages like warper, jumper, and snatcher. Oh, Lynn says, I can think of ways to generate poison gas plausibly. I wonder why it's never evolved on Earth. Daniel says, that's because octopi die after mating. Lynn says, it's unlikely that any organism will have a large separation between its brain and its major sensory organs because of the finite speed of nerve impulses. Oh, wait, but they're still long-lived, right? Never mind, just checked, and the parrot thing is just theoretical, no documented cases. But they're still long-lived, right? The alien minds. Brains, nature, the influence of biology. Alien creation 9, intelligence, mating behavior, social organization. Well, that took us through alien creation. Again, another kind of like just handbook for people who are trying to create plausible whole worlds and societies for gaming. Future and alien civilizations. So more about societies, corruptibility, for instance. Oxygen breathers unite. Some space settings have so many alien species, there's no way everyone can keep track of them all. David Brenn's Uplift series and James White's Sector General stories involve incredibly diverse multi-species societies. In such a setting, beings may feel kinship with related or similar species. White and Doc Smith both use classification systems for alien species based on various characteristics in biology and environment. Knowing your proper species code could be a matter of life and death for interstellar travelers, especially when a mistyped digit could put you in the fluorine breather section of a starship. Of course, even species that eat and breathe the same stuff can be radically different in habitat and outlook, and there's a lot of dramatic and comic potential in having human beings lumped together with a hideous or hostile species that happens to share the same classification code. I was just reading about exotic matter had just come up in some type of thread or something that I was reading about on the UFO side of things. I think I forget, it had something to do with travel or something like that. And people were talking about whether or not, what exactly exotic matter means in the context of a physics explanation. It's like, well, no, we could totally do this. We just need exotic matter. Super science, I think, in GURPS terms. Money. There's a long tradition of coming up with new names for money in futuristic settings, and one can tell a lot about a society by what its currency is called. Credits is a very common currency in science fiction, suggesting a highly abstract money system, possibly with no physical money circulating at all. Other societies might prefer a currency with more objective basis and value, such as a gigajoule, about $10, a metabyte, about 20 cents, or grams of various metals, like gold-pressed platinum. If counterfeiting is a problem, money may take the form of a one-time cryptographic keys. Currency names can also reflect the society's history and values. Monarchies may have royals or imperials. Any human culture might use solars in honor of the home system, or stars as a more generic unit. Of course, an especially balkanized setting might not have any kind of standard interstellar currency at all. All transactions off-planet must be in barter, and the value of an item shifts wildly depending on who you are negotiating with. Law and justice, resolving disputes, criminal detection, punishment, military forces, alternate armies, let's see, how does GURPS handle military rank? Let's look at this. There's a useful rule of thumb when deciding what military rank a given soldier or spacer should have. Each level of military rank means the character has about 4 to 5 times as many subordinates under his direct command. This number has to do with the span of control concept. Most humans can deal with about that number of subordinates before becoming overwhelmed and needing to delegate authority. So someone with rank 0 has no subordinates. Rank 1 has 4 to 5 people. Rank 2 commands 16 to 25 men. Rank 3 has 64 to 125 troops, and so on. This rule of thumb often breaks down across the transition between senior enlisted rank and officer rank. A very junior officer may have military rank 3 while still only commanding a section or a platoon. Also, a serviceman in a staff position with no one under his direct command will usually have lower military rank than his position in the hierarchy would otherwise indicate. Characters on staff might add levels of courtesy rank to reflect their anomalous position of great influence, but no subordinates. The rule for military rank may be extended to other forms of rank as well, since the span of control concept works for every human institution. Interstellar governments. So an especially interesting form of interstellar anarchy is macro life. This concept was invented shortly after the idea of space colonies independent of planets. If a space colony is self-sufficient, then it's essentially a giant spaceship. It can move about the solar. If a space colony is self-sufficient, it's essentially a giant spaceship. It can move about the solar system or venture to other planets. It can build daughter colonies. Oh, space colonies independent of planets. I missed that part. Macro life. Idea of space colonies independent of planets. If a space colony is self-sufficient, it's essentially a giant spaceship. It can move about the solar system or venture into other stars. It can build daughter colonies and spread its culture and heritage. In short, it can act like a really huge living organism. The humans within the colony act as its DNA. A civilization consisting of mobile, self-sufficient, advanced city-states is very difficult to subject to any sort of central control. So it's a macro life society would be anarchic by default. Some clans of city ships might form temporary alliances or build empires in certain star systems, but their influence would be limited. The GSVs of Ian M. Banks' Culture series are effectively macro life vessels controlled by superintelligent AIs. As on 21st century Earth, nearly all worlds or civilizations in the galaxy may be controlled in an alliance to preserve peace among them. How well this alliance works actually depends on how it is structured and what the member states think of it. A united galaxy organization could be the last best hope for peace, or nothing but a glorified debating society where career bureaucrats from minor states can lord it over their representatives of the galactic great powers. If some great peril threatens, getting the United Galaxy to recognize the danger and respond to it can be a daunting task even for the most heroic adventurers. A minor civilization threatened by aggressors might desperately try to get the United Galaxy to intervene, while a civilization devoted to personal freedom might equally be desperately trying to prevent the United Galaxy's interference. Sable Phoenix says, or you could just turn the planet as a whole into a spaceship. Larry Nevin's puppeteers set up a Kempler rosette of 5 planets and turned them into a starship. Interesting. The classic Federation, corporate state, why people support rotten empires. It's nice to think that a government that goes too far will eventually cause the citizens to rise in righteous wrath and throw the rascals out. It's also convenient when all of the defenders of the evil empire wear uniforms, except for the occasional secret police spy. Unfortunately, we know from centuries of experience that doesn't really work this way. The worst tyrannies imaginable have been enthusiastically supported by people no worse than you or me. Without going deeply into psychology, here are some of the reasons why citizens support tyrannies. You can use these to make your fictional evil empire and its people something more than laser fodder. Citizens fear that the unknown will be worse than the known. A foreign philosophy, a strange religion, or perhaps society breaking down into anarchy. They may fear and hate an enemy population, especially if they are a different race or religion, or let alone species. Do you hate the bug soldiers because they are cruel and ruthless, or because bugs are icky? Many people fear that a new government would cost them their jobs or personal power. In a corrupt regime, they may have good reason to be afraid of justice. A clever regime's propaganda will play on all these fears, constantly portraying the foe as inhuman, the rebels as terrorist killers. People who are used to obeying a law often have a hard time changing their habits when the law becomes oppressive. They still believe that the police only arrest criminals. Honest people have nothing to fear. When the rebels break into an armory to get guns, these people only see that a robbery was committed. Enough of this, and patriotic citizens may volunteer for the army to fight the wicked rebels. Obviously, rebellions find more support on worlds that were free until the empire conquered them. But even there, some citizens may hate the occupier, but doubt the rebels would be any better. You can fight for freedom, but once you win, you have to set up a government. And people may be loyal to the idea or to the ideals of a nation or empire, even when the reality is tarnished. My country, right or wrong. It's not evil or even cowardly to be afraid of starvation, torture, and death. Any successful rebellion must overcome these fears to convince the people that anything is better than slavery. Meanwhile, the government is telling them that anything is better than anarchy, which is why rebellions have a hard time of it. By John M. Ford. The amount of power that would take to puts the puppeteer solidly as a high level 2 civilization on the Kardashev scale. Empires, alternate empires, alien governments with hive minds. Governmental organizations. Some of this I feel like I'm seeing the same kind of topics come up again. Startown. A long-standing trope in science fiction is the rough-and-tumble Startown district of the nearby spaceport. On all but the most xenophobic worlds, the authorities realize that off-worlders will have strange customs, may not understand local rules, and need to cool their jets after a long voyage. Some planets have a small area, often no more than a few city blocks, near the spaceport, where officials turn a blind eye to strange behavior. Assume the CR in Startown is 1 or 2 levels lower than the norm for that world. In addition to visitors, star towns attract locals with unconventional tastes or ideas. Some just drop in to gawk at the off-worlders, but a few others move in and settle down. Add to them a few spacers permanently between berths and an assortment of crooks and opportunists, and you've got a star town. On some worlds, Star Town is legally defined, perhaps even lying within the port's perimeter fence under control of the Spaceport Authority. It may even be an entire city, a treaty port like Old Shanghai, the only place on the planet where off-worlders and locals can mix. While the cops may tolerate some variations of local mores in Startown, that doesn't mean the place is a free-fire zone. Violence, especially violence involving weapons, will bring the appropriate response. Crimes committed against locals are investigated as usual. Crimes against off-worlders may not be such a big deal. The regulars in star towns understand this and do their part to keep the peace. Adventuring. Oh, we've been going for an hour and a half. I kind of want to finish this book. I don't know what else there is to say here. We'll just see here. A useful concept in designing a campaign is to think of the default adventure. This is simply what the characters are expected to do. In classic Dungeons & Dragons, for instance, the default adventure is exploring an underground complex full of monsters and treasure. In Call of Cthulhu, the default adventure is investigating an ancient cosmic horror. The default assumption and campaign concept tend to be closely linked. One is simply an application of the other. So for a band of tough space mercenaries, the default is a military operation, attacking an enemy force. For explorers, it's finding a new planet and solving mysteries. Not all the adventures have to fit in the same template. In fact, it would be deadly dull to make them all the same. So you have the hook. Let me make this abundantly clear. I do the job and then I get paid. Mal from Firefly. I should watch. Firefly's another one I should go back and watch again. Goals, obstacles, scientific puzzles, adventure seeds, all kinds of characters here, group structures. Notes on niche protection. Character concepts. This is going to give us templates here. Space Knights. Aliens, robots, and AI. Advantages, disadvantages, and skills. The GURPS rules are extremely flexible, but creating characters with far future or alien settings may require a few adjustments or special interpretations. So advantages, different notes on advantages. G experience. Here's racial memory, improved G tolerance. Code of honor, disturbing voice, bad sight, fragile. Here's that increased life support. Aquatic creatures require flooded living quarters and water-filled environmental suits. This makes their life support massive, worth negative 10 points. Organisms from different atmospheres, chlorine breathers, methane breathers, or hydrogen breathers, require pressurized quarters, negative 10 points. Some aliens may require new forms of increased life support. Extremely large beings, 4 or more meters in height and length, take the large life support requirement, which doubles the minimum space for bunks, quarters, and airlocks. For each additional doubling of height, add another level. Space-dwelling organisms need vacuum and zero gravity, which combines the massive and pressurized requirements. Lecherousness. In realistic or even semi-realistic campaign, characters with lecherousness will not be attracted to aliens, even attractive ones. Lecherous characters who also have xenophilia will be attracted to aliens normally, and for 20% they can be lecherous only toward aliens. In less realistic campaigns in which cross-species liaisons are common, apply the physiology modifier as a negative modifier to the lecher's self-control roll. GURPS covering everything here. New rules for skills here, or more information on skills. Oh, we do have some character templates here. Okay, so astronaut, colonist, bounty hunter, detective, con man, doctor, explorer, merchant. So this would be a part of the book that's more player oriented. Scientist, secret agent, security officer, soldier, space knight. You're an elite warrior trained with secret martial arts and equipped with super technology that can be to be a defender of the galactic society. More than a mere soldier, you fight for honor and out of a sense of duty to all sentient life. The exact nature of your training depends on the weapons available, but whatever they are, you're a master. Space worker, technician, thief, and then our biography. All right, well, that is GURPS Space. That's an intense book. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Deckard, District 9. But what if I want to play a sandworm? Oh, well, then you're going to have to create the sandworm template. But don't forget, make sure that sandworm conforms to all of the rules in this GURPS Aliens chapter. We don't want to do anything unrealistic for sandworm. We can't have that in our role-playing game. All right. Well, that was intense, but I really enjoyed this because of the conversations that we had. These were some great conversations and things to think about. I do want to look at starships. So we'll look at starships. And I want to make some starships. I got 3 ideas about some starships to design using the GURPS Starship rules. So I think the GURPS Starship book will be fun to look at. We'll see how you actually make a starship using the rules and then try to actually make a couple of them. All right. I've got lots to do today. I've got to run errands this afternoon, and I've got to be at dinner to talk about a project that's coming up. We'll see if anything comes of it. I will let you know. Until then, everybody, thank you so much for being here with me. Please do check out the Discord server. I will see everybody later. And until then, be constructive, be creative, and grind on. Later.